right, well, thank you for joining us this evening for our Assisted Living Professional and Family Panel. This will be recorded and emailed to you within the next couple of days to refer back to. I'll go over some of the items for Zoom. So understanding Zoom, your video will remain off and you will be muted. You can see some of the pictures there to the right. It says unmute, start video. So those will be off during this session. However, you do have the option to submit questions and get them answered by pressing the Q&A button, which you'll see to the right here, the Q&A, and typically it's at the bottom of your screen. So my name is Christina Manley. I am the Director of Sales for Chelsea Retirement Community. And as you can see from this fun picture is our sales team from last Halloween. And you can also see with our Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, James Kelly, as the chef. He's there to the right of the screen within that group picture. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background, my background involves working for home care and hospice agencies and the hospital system before coming to Chelsea Retirement Community. I am originally from Southern California, and I've lived here in Chelsea, Michigan for over 13 years now, and I love this small town feel. So I'm happy to be here with the Chelsea Retirement Community family. Tonight you will hear from each speaker that will give a bio of themselves, answer some of those frequently asked questions that they encounter, and hear from a family's journey looking for a place they now call home for their loved one. Please also, when throughout the event, we also want you to utilize that Q&A option for each speaker. And at the end of the event, you'll also have the opportunity to answer some of those questions. So please feel free throughout the presentation to do that. And now I would like to introduce our first speaker, Katie Garvey, who is our staff, or who is on staff with us here at Chelsea Retirement Community.
Thank you, Christina. I am a licensed occupational therapist, and I'm also certified in the positive approach to care model as the trainer and coach. And I joined the Chelsea Retirement Community, it'll be 4 years ago, at the end of this month, as part of an initiative to enhance the care that we provide to people living with dementia within our assisted living facility. Statistically speaking, there are a large number of people who make a transition to assisted living who are experiencing some sort of cognitive health status change. So for the last 4 years, I have been working with staff members, family members, and volunteers, and training them in the positive approach to care, which I'm going to talk about later. But moving onto campus at CRC is a big transition. And so the first question I'm going to talk about is how you as a family member and we as staff can help this transition be the least stressful for the loved one who's joining us as a community member. So people move for various reasons. Sometimes it's to get closer to be in closer proximity to family. Sometimes it's a change in health status. Sometimes it's just for their own peace of mind for any kind of future care considerations that they might have. And they are often looking for someone, and sometimes it's their children, sometimes it's a family friend or another relative. They're looking for them for help and assistance in this transition. So assisted living is a great option for those who recognize that they have some need for assistance and they're able to move about in a familiar atmosphere on a sort of smaller scale. It's a supported living environment. That's the new jargon. And it's designed, our campus is designed to optimize our community members' independence and autonomy with just the right amount of help with daily routines. So they have individualized apartment spaces that they can make their own. That's a private domain, and it helps them create a comfortable atmosphere for them to call home. Moving as a change is extremely stressful, and people are often leaving behind very familiar and comfortable spaces. So people's ability to cope with this stress varies greatly, and it's going to take time and intentional effort on the part of family members, staff members, and the new community member to feel comfortable and familiar here. So an older adult or a senior who becomes a community member who moves in has a right to make choices of how he or she structures their day, how and when they interact with other people here on campus, and what they choose to do with their time. We do our best to balance the needs of the individual resident with the structural and regulatory processes that we are bound to follow from the state of Michigan and on a national level. So we are here to help is here, but we cannot force anyone to do anything or something that they don't want to do. Staff is on hand to help with things like getting to and from meals, physical and cognitive assistance for people's daily care routines, and we like to offer lots of choices for different occupations to engage in meaningful and purposeful endeavors in this supported environment. Families have a really important role to play. They provide the continuity of long-standing relationships, and they know so much about their loved ones' preferences, values, and personal history. So family members, you serve as an important advocate for your loved one, and you become a member of the care team. You play a really vital role in endorsing our staff members and helping to develop a relationship with them on your own and for your loved one, and you can help model for your loved one to do the same. So helping to support connections to things outside the community, our community at CRC, is a really important role that you have too. Things like medical care appointments, financial and legal relationships or obligations, acquiring any needed supplies, and just providing some companionship for love and support, because all those things are really beyond the scope of our staff here on campus, and families played a vital role there. But just as family members count on us to take care of the daily care needs, we count on families to help with those things that are beyond our scope here on campus. Because staff spend so much time interacting with community members every day, all day long, consistently, they are really, really good at noticing changes or any kind of difficulties people might start to have. And they really, truly care about each and every resident's health and well-being, and that includes a lot of different things. So the next thing that often comes up is a loved one who's been diagnosed with some sort of cognitive health issue. And that could be from anything from mild cognitive impairment to some sort of dementia. And there's lots of different types of dementia. So how can you as a family member, and how can we as staff support this person who's living with some sort of cognitive health change? How can we support them for continued health and well-being? So dementia or mild cognitive impairment, they're a part of a continuum of cognitive health issues, and they significantly impact people's daily lives. Many of the health concerned are often overlooked or undiagnosed, not from neglect on anyone's part, but often out of a fear or stigma about what that all means. Living in long-term familiar environments help people to continue to engage because they've been living there for decades, and they have very well ingrained habits and familiarity with their environment. So a sudden change, like a hospitalization or a move to a new location, can sometimes kind of open up Pandora's box and reveal just how much someone is struggling. So when things start to change, people living with the brain changes associated with a health status change can sometimes become really defensive and guarded. They want to maintain their autonomy and their sense of control over their daily lives. They also have often trouble recognizing or are in fierce denial of what they are struggling with. So you, as a loved one who's known them for a very long time, if you observe things, we highly recommend that you have a really encourage them to have a thorough medical exam and go with them to encourage some frank discussion with a medical professional. So the brain changes in some ways as a result of typical normal aging. So identification of dementia or mild cognitive impairment is not a foregone conclusion just because you're getting older. And it really requires a thorough exam to rule out any other contributing factors. So in order to provide the most appropriate support, there needs to be a plan formulated to make a transition to a designated dementia care environment. The journey for someone who's been diagnosed or is living with dementia may start at home, in their own home environment. So the questions we want to ask is what kind of supports can be put into place to allow the family members to help while they're still there? Can some additional care support be brought in to share the work of daily care and help this person who's living with brain changes learn to trust and work with someone who's not a member of the family? Other times that journey starts in another area here on our campus. If self-care and household management tasks become more difficult to maintain, more support is available in the assisted living environment. However, in a typical assisted living environment, we assume, and it's sort of structured on the basis that a resident is going to be able to ask for help as needed, and they're going to have a fairly accurate self-assessment of what their personal capacities are. But with a typical dementia brain change, lack of awareness of where we're struggling or deficits is a hallmark early symptom. Wayfinding and sequencing becomes more difficult. Social engagement and organizing one's day can become really overwhelming. In response to those sorts of changes, people can often begin to self-isolate in order to stay in their comfort zone. So the individual, he or she, can become defensive and deny needing any help, and they're having trouble hanging on to day-to-day information. Those sorts of things indicate that an environmental supports aren't really well matched to what the person individually needs. So at some point, it's really imperative to make a plan to transition to a better suited environment where the person has an ability to develop some habits and routines and familiarize himself or herself with those who are going to provide care and also with their new physical environment. Trust and rapport are the most important things to establish, and that takes time, and it's absolutely necessary to provide appropriate care. So the loved one, we really encourage them to be involved in the decision-making in whatever way he or she can. Ideally, in the past, and COVID-19 of course has sort of thrown everything up in the air, but we really advise that people consider a number of options and narrow it down to 2 or 3 that you, as their loved ones who are entrusted with helping them out, feel comfortable with. And then involve them in the process along the way. Give them a chance to see a new location, be able to meet some people, and you remain positive about the change because they're going to look to you for whether you trust it or not. So everyone building rapport and trust with the new care partners is absolutely necessary to be able to provide the support throughout their journey with dementia. So my third and last question that I'm going to talk about is, what is this thing called positive approach to care? And how has it influenced our service to community members who are living with dementia or brain changes? So the positive approach to care is a care philosophy that's based on the work of a woman named Teepa Snow, who's an occupational therapist and a 40-year clinician with experience in helping people who are experiencing brain changes. And she has an organization by the same name, Positive Approach to Care. So 4 years ago, we started a relationship with her organization. And today we are one of 4 recognized participating organizations in the United States. There's one in Hawaii, one in Naples, Florida, one in Holland on the far side of the state, and Towsley Village here at CRC. So dementia is an umbrella term for a group of neurodegenerative diseases which are terminal, there's no known cure, progressive, and really at least 2 parts of the brain are dying. People who've been diagnosed with dementia can live well if the right supports are put into place and plans are made to help them in ways which reflect their values, their preferences, and above all, respect their own individual personhood. So people who have dementia need people around them who know them well, who are trained to recognize changing needs and ways to address those needs proactively. We're here to help them, to work with them, to make the day the best it can be. We look for opportunities for them to use their skills and abilities to engage in the world around them. We want them to feel safe, comfortable, and well cared for. We strive for more moments of joy than sadness, but we give everyone space and freedom to experience the full range of emotion. Their environment needs to be friendly, forgiving, functional, and familiar. Both the people in it, the physical layout, and the social atmosphere. We meet people here at CRC where they are on their journey, and our expectations of them needs to match their needs, and this changes often. So we count on families to partner with us to provide support and lend their knowledge to help us inform our approach to care. So we recognize that supporting people with dementia can be really stressful. So we provide training and support for staff and families to develop strategies and work together to meet people's needs. Sometimes we're successful, and sometimes we have to try something different, or then the needs change. Everyone is doing their best, and the most important thing is empathy and understanding. It's really important that we maintain these qualities. And it's not only the physical needs of the residents, but also we have to recognize that they have spiritual and emotional needs as well that need to be addressed to ensure their overall health and well-being.
Thank you, Katie. Very informative. I know on this slide here, you guys can kind of see some of Katie's credentials. There's some contact information. Also, does anybody have any questions at this time for Katie that you might want to ask her? We will still have time at the end of also this event, but if there's anything that you guys would like to ask, please do that in the Q&A. And I'll leave it open here for a little bit before we move on to the next presenter. Let me see here. Well, Katie, you were very informative. Maybe there's no questions at this moment. I know with us here in the sales team, it's always a pleasure to work with you. And we do, when we're talking to families in the beginning part, before they even come in as a resident, we always have the opportunity to call on our clinical staff to kind of get some training ourselves. And you have a lot of the one-on-ones with family before they even come in. So we do appreciate that as well. And as you can see too, her contact information is here, and also her email. And then again, we will have this recorded, and you will be able to refer back to if you're needing her information, or if you need to reach out to us, we can also give that to you as well. So right now I'm going to be introducing Annette Sandretto. She's a nurse practitioner. She practices here in Chelsea and at our community. So I'd like to introduce Annette.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate it. And I apologize, we have a noisy ventilation system in here, so I apologize for people hearing it in the background. My name is Annette Sandretto. I'm a nurse practitioner with Michigan Medicine in the Departments of Family Medicine and Ambulatory Care. I'm based at the Michigan Medicine Chelsea Health Center, which is where about 50% of my time is spent seeing patients outpatient. The other 50% of my time is spent at Chelsea Retirement Community coordinating our Michigan Medicine and our School of Medicine family medicine service that we have at Chelsea Retirement Community, which we use both for part of our practice in geriatrics, but it's also a training site for our family medicine residents to learn more about geriatric care. So it's essential to our work. I am the coordinator for the service, so I help coordinate myself, another advanced practice provider, as well as 4 of our physicians. And our job is to see patients on campus, both in skilled nursing, which we're not going to talk on as much today, but also the assisted living and dementia units. And I've worked closely with Katie, managing a lot of those residents as she discussed. So a little bit what I want to tell you about is how healthcare is delivered in assisted livings and memory loss units. So these are seen as residential domiciles and licensed by the state. That does not require that there be nurses on staff 24 hours a day. I think one of the things that people don't always know when they come in and start visiting a facility is, are there going to be nursing staff available all the time? And most facilities in Michigan don't have a nurse on 24 hours a day. They may have a nurse as a manager in assisted living or in a memory loss unit. But generally, you're going to be working with supervisors who may be medical assistants and residential care assistants who help pass medications, and as Katie said, are the staff that provide the bulk of the care during the day and who really become the most informed about caring for family members in facilities. Our Michigan Medicine Service at Chelsea is unique. We are on campus 5 days a week with some provider, either an advanced practice provider, myself, or a physician's assistant, or one of our physicians. We have a 24-hour backup call system, which is our Chelsea Hospital service, which is staffed by attending physicians and resident physicians in family medicine. And in the facility, we have several unique things. We have lab available to us Monday through Saturday, and we have on-call radiology to do x-rays and ultrasounds for basic imaging needs. The biggest thing is also helping coordinate with specialists outside the system. So one of the difficulties is in the community, people don't always understand as medical providers the difference between skilled nursing, assisted living, memory loss units. And so a lot of what we do is talking to those specialists about what can be done and what can't be done. So things like specialists will say, well, I want someone to have intravenous antibiotics, so through an IV line into the bloodstream. That's not something that can be done in assisted livings or memory loss units unless outside home care nurses are able to come in and provide that support. Generally, that's a skilled nursing need. And so oftentimes we have to sometimes negotiate across campus to find ways to make that work. Because one of the essential things when people are staying in assisted living and memory loss is that's their home. And so our goal is to try and provide their care in their home. At Michigan Medicine, we view ourselves as part of what we call a circle of care, which is our goal is to provide care to the patient. Possibly they started with us as an outpatient in our clinic, then may have required to move to care in, say, assisted living or memory loss. We continue to provide that care at Chelsea Retirement Community, but we supplement that by having things like our Chelsea Family Medicine Service at Chelsea Hospital for inpatient care. We also have our Michigan Medicine specialists, hospital specialists there to provide support. We also have a University of Michigan Family Medicine Service to provide support at one of the larger hospitals in the area. So we look at it as our way of being able to pass from hand to hand to hand through our entire provider group, keeping those patients in that circle all the time, improving communication and coordination of care. Again, we're unique at Chelsea Retirement Community because we are on campus seeing patients. Not all facilities have a medical service in-house, and that's a question that often gets asked is, can I take my mom out to her doctor she still likes in the community? Absolutely. If you have a provider that you have an excellent relationship with, who your family member trusts, you absolutely stay with that person. We encourage that strongly. But sometimes patients reach a point where they're not able to go out into the community anymore, either because of memory issues, which makes it difficult for them to go out and feel comfortable. Often leaving the facility can cause increased anxiety. So we generally like to help provide the opportunity for people to have that care in their home. And so people often go, well, then what does that mean? Well, we round on patients. We actually have a list of routine visits that we follow, making sure people get a visit like they would in the office. You know, just checking up, seeing how things are going. How are their medicines working? How's their blood pressure? Do they need blood work done? The kind of stuff you would get when you would just come in for a basic office appointment, but we do it right there in their apartment in either Glacier Commons or in Towsley Village. The second part is by, as Katie touched on, developing that one-on-one relationship with even our memory loss patients. It's incredibly important that they see us as part of the family and part of the care staff. And I have to say, over the years, even some of the memory loss patients still seem to remember us when we come around. They know who we are and they know they can trust us. And that's vitally important, because I think one of the issues people often run into is people don't see providers rounding on a regular basis. The anxiety level of residents, of not understanding who is this person and why are they there. And it's also important we partner, as Katie again touched on, very closely with staff. As we tell everybody, you're the ones working with them every day. So it's essential that you let us know if things are changing or something's happening. We can't help or intervene unless we know what's going on. So our eyes and ears on the ground all the time are those people in the facility, and they are probably our biggest link. Another question is, I get a lot of this is, Why don't we see the doctors all the time? Well, in our situation at Michigan Medicine, we have a large number of what are called advanced practice providers, which are nurse practitioners and physician's assistants. In my case, I have a bachelor's of nursing and a master's of nursing, and then went through extensive additional training to be able to care for patients. We do a lot of the same work that physicians do. I tell everybody, although not with the same depth of knowledge that the physicians have, which is why we always have physicians available to us. What's nice is we also can bring a bit more of a psychosocial touch, because that's a lot of what happens with physician's assistants and nurse practitioners in training. And we're more available than the physicians are, so we become a touch point for those residents, patients, as we think of them, and their families. Their families know we're often the person they're going to be talking to, and we're often the person that they can reach out to, because we're probably more aware of what's happening at the facility at the time. I think it's a unique practice environment that lets us bring all different types of care to the table, which I think is wonderful. And Chelsea Retirement Community gives us a fantastic opportunity to do that and to show how a multidisciplinary service can really shine and do great things for families. And last of all, I really want to touch on, in my last question, is something that comes up a lot, which is end-of-life care. So as Katie touched on, we often deal with patients and have to meet them where they are. And people live with us for their lives. And that's what they're going to be doing. We're going to be going with them through the entire journey, from the start of the moment they move in with us to the start of the moment when they begin their process of dying. We as a team place a lot of value, again, on staff being able to clue us into patients changing. Families are excellent at reaching out to us and saying, my mom's really changing. You know, can you go check on her? Let me know what's going on. And we see significant changes in patients, weight loss, not being able to eat as well. As Katie touched on, they're not able to care for themselves as well. And as people start moving into those end stages of whatever their terminal process is, we work very, very hard to make sure that we ensure that patients stay comfortable and that they stay at their home. And I think that's crucial for people to understand, is that at Chelsea Retirement Community, Glacier Commons and Towsley Village are their home. This is where they live. Our job is to come to their home and provide them with comfort and provide them with the security that they'll be able to stay in their home. And I think that's a crucial thing that people need to know. You don't have to leave assisted living. You don't have to leave a memory loss unit to have hospice care. We bring all that into you. We always approach families about hospice care initially telling them about the decline, about saying, you know, what did your parents ever talk to you about what they wanted at end of life? I think that's crucial. Having those conversations as part of the process of moving to a facility, you know, the really difficult ones, which are, if something changes mom or dad, what would you want us to do? Having those things in writing in the form of an advance directive, which then helps us as providers when we're going to start talking to you and talking with your family member about what they would like to have happen as they're moving into that terminal process. Katie touched on this as well, is having that point person. Powers of attorney are essential for residents who are living in facilities. There may come a situation where they are not able to explain what they need and what they want. And it's crucial that they have an advocate in the form of an identified power of attorney for healthcare and, importantly, for finance, who can step in and help them and make sure their wishes are, you know, fulfilled the way they wanted them done. And that's the biggest thing, is our job is to help patients have the life they want and do what they want. And I think it's critical that we understand that. And I can't say enough about how incredible the staff at CRC are in working with end-of-life patients. Katie, our social worker in the facility, the managers, everybody has worked so hard to educate staff, to provide support, to be proactive in providing that to families at end of life. And I think it's important that people know that we are there through the entire circle, from the first moment they come till the last moment when they're with us. And we feel that it's a critical part of what we do, that we're there with every step that people go through with their life. And as I said, people have we like to say that we're there from that circle of care in the community. In our case with Michigan Medicine, And we're always open to talking to patients and families about any needs or concerns. And again, part of what we do is making sure we fulfill residents' wishes, keep them healthy, keep them happy, and make sure they know that somebody cares about them.
Thank you, Annette. Very helpful, very informative. We also have, Annette has her contact information here on this slide, which again, you'll also be able to, if you didn't write that down, we can definitely give that to you, and you'll also see it on the recording there when we send you the link. I'm going to open it up for question and answers. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask Annette during this time? Again, you can ask them now or towards the end of our event. But definitely, if you have a question, please ask away. Let's see here. Give it a few more minutes. I know some could be joining via their phone or their laptop, and I know with my phone, when I'm typing, it's hard to get some of those questions in when I'm attending some of these events for myself. So I'll give it a couple more minutes here. Looks like let's see if a question's coming in here. Alrighty. Looks like one's coming in, so let me see here. Oh, here it is. Here's a question. How do you know when a loved one needs assisted or memory care?
I think that's tough. Probably Katie and I could both answer that. We'd probably be pretty close to the same answer if I had to guess. Memory care, often it's a situation where we become concerned if residents, one of the big keys, and Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, I know what we look at is if people start wandering or if they're not able to ask for help, and we know that they have an underlying diagnosis of memory loss, particularly dementia, we look at if they need additional support care, because as Katie pointed out, in Chelsea Retirement's community situation, the staff in the memory loss unit have been trained to specifically work with memory loss patients where they are and then help meet them as their needs change. And I think that's the biggest key, is when we start seeing a situation where they're not able to voice their concerns or they're able to tell us what's happening with them, at least medically, that's what we look at. We also have some very fancy scoring tools and other things we use to figure out where people are in terms of what they need. And that's more a medical part of it. But Katie, I think you can probably answer some more of that as well, because you really help us work on that and help us identify people.
Yeah, thanks, Annette. So one of the big things is the footprint. In a typical assisted living, you have a much broader environment and a lot more social inputs. And your ability to navigate your environment as your brain changes with dementia, it's not just about memory, it's about all your sensory processing and data input and what you're able to do with that data with the brain that's not working quite right. So it's not only the physical manifestations, the sort of, and most people who have dementia have comorbidities of other things that are wrong with them. And so their ability to care for themselves, but also their ability to socialize and navigate in their environment. So when they transition to a neighborhood that is a dementia care therapeutic environment, it's smaller, and there are still private and semi-private and more public spaces, but they're at a scale that's much more navigable. And also staff is able to anticipate needs and really is able to supervise on a more consistent basis. So the ratio as far as how many staff members we have versus how many residents are in this area is smaller as well. And they are the area that they encompass. There is a structured day and a daily routine that really is built around helping support people so that they're able to do as much as they can on their own with support. Oftentimes, what you see is people who are absolutely overwhelmed in a typical assisted living environment, and they don't recognize that they need help, and they really kind of push up against it, and it becomes not only a safety issue but also a health concern. So their health and well-being, and we've had lots of occasions where people have started out in a typical assisted living, and we recognize that they're struggling, families are having a harder time, and then we make the transition and they're like, wow, now I really see just how much my loved one was struggling, and they're doing much better here because they are able to, we're better able to meet their needs.
Thank you, Annette and Katie. Very informative. And as you can see, a lot of that's a tough question. We get that a lot too within our sales team and our clinical team. And that's something that we don't take lightly, and we do look at that. So thank you for that question. That was a good question.
Let me just add too that oftentimes when people are needing extra support or help, it's our professional opinion that you make that transition sooner than later, because people are able to, their capacities, they have more reserve capacity to be able to have, it's stressful no matter what, but they have coping mechanisms, they have a chance to really get to know staff, because as more care is needed, that trust and rapport, they've really developed over time. And so moving first into a typical assisted living and then making the switch can be even more stressful. So I'm always happy to see if someone has a dementia diagnosis and things have progressed to a certain point, you're much better off to start off in an environment that's set up to help them.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Annette and Katie. Again, we do as a sales team do rely on our clinical staff to help with a lot of those tough discussions, and we do take the time to look at that. And thank you again for that information that helps kind of shows the process there on the other side. Now I would like to introduce Jim and Pat Hollers, who will discuss their journey in choosing Chelsea Retirement Community for their loved one. So Jim and Pat, go ahead.
Thanks, Christina. So I lost the flip of the coin, so I'm going to be the one speaking. And Pat's going to sit back and critique once we get off of this session. Why don't I give you a little bit of background information before I start into why we chose CRC. We're from the Chicago area originally, and we moved to the Ann Arbor area about 8 years ago. Pat's mom, Margaret, is 95 years old now, and she had been living in an assisted living facility in Chicago for almost 10 years, I think it was. Very happy, very content, kind of queen bee in her little environment there. And then unfortunately, she, about almost 2 years ago now, she broke her ankle, and it was a severe break. And it required, actually, she wound up with 3 surgeries, but she wound up with 2 almost back to back within a few days of each other. And so she needed to go from her assisted living to a rehab facility in the local area in Chicago. And that kind of changed the game because, she had her own private apartment and so forth in assisted living. Here they moved her in. She had a roommate, didn't like that at all. And they basically said, you're going to have to be here for probably 6 or 8 weeks. And that's when all you know what broke loose. And, you know, we were talking to her and going to visit her in Chicago. And we said, well, we got to get you out of here. You got to move to Michigan so you can be closer to us. And Pat said, you know, as soon as you finish rehab, we'll get you out of here. And by the time we left and we're on our way home, I said, we got to get her out of there now. You know, that 8 weeks, she's not going to make the 8 weeks. She's so unhappy. She's getting depressed, you know, all the things you don't want somebody who's rehabbing to do. And, you know, her mental condition was getting poor. So we had to do a scramble basically to figure out, you know, where she was going to come to live here. And that's kind of how we got onto our search for another assisted living. And we developed 4 criteria that we used to make our choice. The first one was the facility itself. Yeah, if we walked into a facility and it was outdated, we just didn't like the looks of it. You know, the atmosphere itself didn't feel right. Then we said, Mom would walk in here and she'd walk right back out again. And, you know, even though she's 95, she does not want to be in a facility that she's not going to be happy with. She wants the surroundings to be right. So that was one criteria. What we liked about CRC was, you know, we found that, you know, everything was current. We liked the different sunrooms, you know, a lot of room to roam if you want to. You know, it was clean. You know, so the cleanliness was important because we were in some places that weren't so clean. And so we made a decision, you know, that was a good, so far so good. The second thing was the living space. You know, Mom had lived in her own apartment. And there was no way she wanted to live with somebody else. So it had to be a private apartment. But she had a kitchenette when she was in the other place. And we had gotten to a point where she didn't need that. But it would be nice to have a little refrigerator, right, for her goodies and whatever. And so we found that CRC was, you know, accommodating us there as well. Private, got the room size, it all worked out very nicely. And then just looking at my notes here, the service capabilities. You know, we were really looking for kind of, I'd say it this way, but a one and done. You know, we were after, you know, an organization that could offer us anything from all the way from assisted living to end of life care, to hospice. Because we found that with Pat's mom, you know, it took us forever just to convince her to move to Michigan. And if we had to move her again, that wasn't going to be a happy time for anybody. So what we found with CRC was that, you know, first of all, the facility was good, the space was good. You got rehab in the facility and also right down the street, you know, if it has to be a serious rehab. And then on top of that, if she progressed to a point where she needed more care, and if, you know, we went to hospice, that was all available. And so that was very attractive to us to say, look, you're going to be a half hour away from us. You're here. If you like it, you'll stay and everything's going to work out and you'll never have to move again. And so that helped the transition. Okay. That was a big part of us getting her to say, yes, okay, I'll do this. And then the other thing, there were a couple other things. First of all, we realized that there was a hospital right down the street and a dentist right down the street, okay? And she was in the hospital for the 3rd surgery. A lot easier to take somebody and, you know, drive 5 or 10 minutes than have to go half hour, an hour, wherever. She's had dentistry work done. And once again, you know, very easy to make those services happen when they're close by to you. And then the last thing about that was the downtown area of Chelsea is kind of cool. You know, if you're going to visit or if you've got a friend that's going to visit, you got little restaurants there, you got a little sandwich shop, little, you know, areas to walk around in. And so for the family, there are so few things to do if you want to spend a little bit more time after or before you visit your loved one. So those were some of the things that we noticed. And then the last thing was the residents and staff. We found the staff to be friendly, people smiling. The residents, you walk around in the, in the areas there, everybody seemed to be okay, and believe me, we walked into some facilities where, you want to walk in and want to walk out. People weren't happy, they had these, unfortunately, residents staring ahead out into nowhere. And, that was a downer. And I knew that if my mother-in-law saw that, once again, she'd say, that's not me, get me out of here. So all those things added up. And then the transition, we moved her from Chicago pretty quickly because we needed to get her in. And, there wound up being a third surgery in Chelsea. So a lot of these things happen quickly. And I got to say to you that the CRC team really made this a real seamless transition for us. And Mom, I think she settled in pretty quickly. She has the typical complaints that an elderly person will have. Every once in a while we'll hear, I didn't like the food today. Well, guess what? If you have a loved one and they're elderly, you're going to hear that complaint. That's occasionally, it's not like every other day. So we just kind of chalk that up, right? And the other thing was, well, there was one other thing that I had in mind, but let me see what it was. I guess maybe the point was that, when you're 95 years old, there are going to be some things, you're going to have good days, you're going to have not so good days. She would occasionally complain that people didn't come in and take care of her quickly enough. So we tested that a few times. She has this little thing or this little button to press to bring staff in. I said, press your button, Mom. Okay. Presses the button. Like 60 seconds later, somebody's walking in the room. I go, gee, Mom, that didn't take too long, did it? So, these are things that you gotta expect, if you will. On balance, I would say to you that she's been there 1.5 years now, and we've been very pleased. And I think she's been happy. She's happy, and it's like, are you happy, Mom? Yeah, I'm happy. Okay. And if she's happy, we're happy. So, those are the things I can say. And I last point is, you asked for a testimonial. So yeah, we highly recommend CRC. I think it's been a great place for Mom, and it's really worked out for us too, because like I said, we're about a half hour away. So, we're not next door, but a half hour is a whole lot easier than us, driving 4.5 hours to Chicago. So it's all worked out for us. That's it.
Jim and Pat, thank you so much for sharing your journey and how you chose Chelsea Retirement Community as home for your mom. I have it open here for questions. So if anybody has questions for Jim or Pat, please use this time here. We're gonna open it up for some questions, and then we're gonna go into the next session, which will be time for question and answers for everybody here. But I did wanna note from what Jim and Pat had mentioned. Jim, you had mentioned one and done, which I think that touches on something that a lot of people do look at in this community. And then also with my background, I used to go to a lot of communities when I worked with the hospital system. And I think it's important because you mentioned that one and done, and us being Chelsea Retirement Community, this campus has continuum of care. So we have our independent living, our assisted living, our memory care, our rehab, our skilled section also on this campus. So I think with that, it's nice for a lot of people when they are, I don't want to say shopping, but you are shopping for, you know, while we want you to call this your home, it has to be a right fit, and you'll know that walking in. So we encourage those when we do have tours. I know we're a little restricted here with COVID, even though we have gone to virtual tours for our assisted living with technology. There's a lot of great resources there. But again, we encourage folks to look at your surrounding area, and being Chelsea, it's nice because there are the option of going into town. The hospital is within a couple miles. Our fire department, we have two within Chelsea, downtown Chelsea, we have one, and then outside of town. So there's a lot of resources in this small community. And so we're very appreciative for that. And again, the one and done makes me also think of our all-inclusive for our assisted living and our memory care, which I'll go into that a little bit because we have a couple questions that came through. I have one that says, how do I convince a parent, spouse, or loved one that it would be healthier if he or she would be happier to be in a place where she doesn't feel alone? So I don't know if, Katie, if you want to answer that, or I don't know if you might have discussions with that, or I mean, all of you can actually probably have some input on that one.
Well, I think that the social piece is really, really important. And you can be with a lot of people and still feel lonely. So, but the idea being that we take a lot of care in when someone is introduced to our community to help them integrate and find and really discover what their needs are when it comes to socializing. So you really only need one friend, and sometimes that's enough. Other folks who are much more social will gravitate and want to do things in groups. And so we have both options available, and staff really, a lot of the interaction comes with staff because they are coming in every single day. If they don't need much help, it's just maybe to check and see how things are going and have conversations. And the social isolation is really detrimental to health and well-being. And also, if someone, it can be precipitous for a further decline in function just by virtue of socializing really uses a lot of innate skills. So cognitive decline can be exacerbated for certain if you're not in a situation where you're actually out and socializing. So convincing them is more of a question of saying what the options are. And I mean, in other times, we would invite them to come and be a part of campus and participate in something going on so they can see and have a feel for it. But there's lots of options here for people to have their social needs met. It's completely up to the individual.
Okay, and it looks like they also added of how do I convince to get my loved one there. That's what they were meaning in that question. So I guess that whole before as well.
So I'm just wondering for clarification, is it one of those things where they don't want to move, or the idea of it being an assisted living is what's bothering them? That would
exactly.
So I think the idea is it is someone's home. Like we always say, we happen to work where people live. People don't live where we work. So it's the idea that there are apartments and neighborhoods that people live in. It's just that there are more people around. So if they need help, whenever they need help, it's available. And there is things to do outside, things to do inside. And I think moving, I mean, it's a stressor. It's one of the top 5. So the idea of leaving your comfort zone, there is going to be some inertia, especially when someone is 80 years old or, you know, however old they are when they want to make the transition. And it is a time of loss. You know, it's really hard. It's hard to make friends, and your chances are better if you have more people to choose from. And so I have seen friendships flourish and grow for people who move to campus and are relatively new. So I think you can always make a new friend.
Looks like I have another question that came in. My family member likes to be involved in activities, but can't always handle too much noise or distractions. How do you handle that?
So as an occupational therapist, that's what we do. You grade the activity according to person's needs. So we have one-on-one things people can do. We have things in smaller groups from 3 to 5, and then we have larger groups. Of course, recently, that's just started to roll out again because of COVID. A lot of that stuff was really changed or suspended for a period of time because of our public health concerns. But we have lots of options here on campus of where to do things. So a lot of it is the choice of the environment as well as whatever the activity is. So we have lots of concerts or larger group things for people. And some people want to be involved and do something. Other people would just as soon sit and observe. And they want to be there, but they don't necessarily want to do. They just would rather observe. So we have a life enrichment staff, who are an incredible group of people. They have lots of great creative ideas, and we've done lots of really interesting things. And maybe Margaret's, maybe Pat and Jim could speak to some things that Margaret has enjoyed doing while she's been here.
Yeah, we were just saying that Pat's mom really is not a real social butterfly anymore. And as a result, the relationships, activity-wise, maybe something here or there, but not that often. She likes her own little apartment. That's her own little world. So the relationships that she's developed have really been with the staff. She looks forward to certain people on the staff that she sees every day. And she's really got some strong relationships with some of these people. And in return, which is surprising, there's a few people that really, really, I mean, they love her, you know, and they show it. So, you know, it's kind of a reversal, if you will. You know, you're looking for residents to be social, but the reality is that she's got her relationships with the staff and she's happy that way. So like I said before, if she's happy, we're happy. If that's what you want to do, that's good. Nobody forces her to do anything there. You know, if she doesn't want to do it, it's like, okay, don't do it. Whatever you don't want to do, you don't have to do. We can make recommendations and encourage her, but let me tell you, at 95, you know, sometimes that flies right over her head.
Thank you for sharing that. Great questions. We have a couple more minutes. Does anybody want to ask another question? We are starting to come to the end of our question and answer session and this panel
Christina?
event. Yes.
One other point that I wanted to make, which wound up being an important point on selection criteria. We found that, you know, because Margaret was disabled basically with her broken ankle and in a wheelchair, that there are some assisted livings that do not want to take you if you have to be what they call a 2 assist, you know, where they have to have 2 staff people actually lift you out and move you around and whatever. And that was a problem. And with CRC, they said, no problem, we deal with it, we handle it. You know, if she needs 2 people to get her up and move her out, whatever. And so that did make a difference. There was one other place that we said, kind of nice, kind of closer. But, you know, you got to look at the big picture and say, what are the services that are needed? And that was clearly a service that was needed. So at the time, right.
Thank you for sharing that. Very important. I know it all depends. That's something that we do look at. We do assessments when those that are looking at our assisted living and memory care that I know Annette and Katie spoke about earlier. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, it looks like it's 7 o'clock here. Gosh, that hour went by quick. I would like to, you can see this last slide here. If you have any questions or need more information about Chelsea Retirement Community, we do have a west side and an east side. Our east side contact is Allie Watson. You see her email here, and that's our direct line. And as you saw on one of the slides, our sales team, Nicole Adams is our assisted living sales advisor. So that's who you would be in contact with. But again, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. And if you have any, if you want to set up a time to speak with us, we would love to share more about our community and how we can be here for when the time is right for you or your loved ones. Again, we will also be sharing tonight's event with you via email in the next couple days. So thank you and have a great rest of the evening.